We've definitely spent quite a bit of time on this item this evening. I do want to thank everyone for their patience. I want to thank all those that have been involved in this process for a better part of a year or so. I think, as has been stated a number of different times, this is a challenging decision. I think for my colleagues up here, this is especially kind of challenging for me because this is my neighborhood. I've lived in this neighborhood for 25 years and was a part of that flood back in '98. And I still remember my family being evacuated over to San Marcos High School and sleeping on cardboard boxes. And living at the time at Comanche Hill Apartments and eagerly trying to get a ride from a National Guard armory to just take me so I can find my parents. I couldn't find them. It's a tough decision. And I think a while ago, one of the questions that one of the speakers brought up was, well, you study philosophy and ethics. Understand both sides. Well, the thing is that it's not two-sided. Whenever you look at anything from a philosophical or ethical standpoint, it's got a multitude of different sides. There's no black and white. It's shades of gray.
Here comes a reflection bump. If I can feel it, blind can see it, deaf will hear it, in and out of consciousness go bump.
There's a lot of emotion tied to it. I've heard a lot of people talking about floodway. Well, I was here in the '98. We've owned the land for over 100 years. We've paid taxes on it ever since anybody started paying taxes. I've seen the floods. I've lived through them. And there's not a single flood that we've had in this city that has crossed the part of Capes Camp over by River Road. And I was there in '98 and watched it. I would like to thank you for your time. I hope you look at the Capes Camp project as a positive thing for the city. And you vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton.
In addition to the parkland set aside, the developer could, offer up security agreements, because many people have stated what you'll end up with there is basically a debauchery pit.
Of Capes Camp is going to block the river. It's going to more than likely flood the neighborhoods that already have flooding issues.
We have to think about issues of people's safety in that immediate area in regards to flash flooding and major flash flooding, because people living in that area, i.e. the people who would be residing in this complex, what do we do about their safety in that kind of event? You have what would most likely be detention ponds at the lower elevations of this complex. What happens when we have a major flood and these overfill, the river water itself overfills into the detention ponds?
This beautiful, pristine piece of property that has a great chance of flooding and causing a catastrophe in that neighborhood.
100-foot water quality zone as required by code.
Is this going to be a spit in the face of the hundreds of people that have participated in this plan because we can sneak it in before adoption?
You seem very young to me, some of you. Pardon me, but I'm getting older. And I don't think y'all were around 50 years ago. Some of you might not have lived here in town. 50 years ago, a huge neighborhood was moved. Most of them were moved east of town. And they were moved because the properties along the river flooded and millions of dollars were spent to buy that land and make it into parkland. We had help from the federal government. They called it urban renewal. So what we need is for you to compare how much of the land that was taken from people, so they were moved off, how much of that was floodway and floodplain and how much of it wasn't. You need to really look at this situation and compare it to what happened 50 years ago, because everybody that was here 50 years ago remembers it very clearly. And we should not be treating this situation any differently. We should not be building apartments on land that is right next to the floodplain and the floodway. And a great deal of it is in the floodplain and has to be built up with dirt, which is going to create a levee-like effect when the water comes pouring down Barbara and Linda, those long streets, towards Cape Camp during big floods. And you know we can have worse floods than 98, 3 to 4 times worse. I want to make sure you also understand that detention ponds that are full of sediment and 85% of whatever that's dumped in there and kept, those will be blown out by floods. Thank you.
I was present during the 3 floods we had between 1998 and 2003. 1998 flood was the worst one. It was 24 inches of rain in 8 hours. I believe that the presence of any sort of structure in the Cape Camp area would be tantamount to constructing a levee or a dam for the escape of floodwaters from the Blanco River. It's the Blanco that overflows. The Blanco is a little higher elevation than the San Marcos. Water tends to run downhill. It ran down Conway, Barbara, Linda, all the adjoining streets filled up as well. I believe it would be negligent to place any kind of barrier between exit of the floodwaters of the Blanco toward the San Marcos. Construction would call for the raising of a berm level of the land at the Cape Camp area, decorative fence or a privacy type fence along the top of it.
I really implore you to pay close attention to the information that you're going to be hearing about the way in which our neighborhood floods. We are not talking about the flooding of the San Marcos. We're talking about the flooding from the Blanco River. We're going to keep researching this. We all know how the flooding patterns are, and we don't have confidence that whatever may be developed here would be built with the correct models in mind.
Once we've destroyed the ecosystem, it's going to cost either a lot of money to restore it, who's going to pick up that tab, or it's going to be destroyed beyond repair.
What our children's grandchildren are going to remember.
So on the one hand, they're giving something what really they can't use to build on because it's floodway, water quality zone, and then taking something away that we already have. We've already got Stokes Park.
This is a 100-year floodplain and everything, but I think we can think of about 6 of those 100-year floods that we've had in this area. And I've lived through some of these floods. I've been in the middle of them, and it's a scary situation.
I changed my mind about rezone my 2-acre land now because what I saw, the disaster happened because what we don't respect the nature. Okay, we focus on a lot of development. I went to Indonesia. That's where tsunami is, and devastating. You know, we don't respect the nature. Then if we go too fast, we don't study enough, and when that thing hit, everybody get impact.
This area is where the Blanco and the San Marcos rivers converge, so it's sort of the natural, we know it's in the flood zone.
I'd be interested in seeing the floodplain map, if it's possible to include in the next presentation that was mentioned in that as well. Absolutely. If that's possible.
The flooding issues, we know that flooding is going to be an issue down there. I don't see any way you could do development and not have flooding issues there. That is still a pretty sensitive part of the San Marcos River. So I think that retention ponds are going to flood. All that's going to get into the river. I think that is inevitable if this goes through.
And I understand the argument of why are we even here? But, you know, there are procedures that have to happen.
Somebody wants to dance with I viene con amor. If I can feel it, blind can see it, deaf will hear it, in and out of consciousness go boom. I viene con amor.
The 20 acres of floodplain from the developer, and the fact of the matter is that that land is useless. They can't use it for anything. They would just have to pay property taxes, and they'd have to maintain it. So why not give it to the city, call it a park? Well, you can, but the problem is it's in a floodplain. You can't build restrooms. You can't have picnic tables. You can't have any amenities for the park. And the Parks Board has in its recommendations said that the parkland there was not sufficient for the 1,000 students that would be living in the apartments, their friends in the adjacent neighborhoods. It would not be a community park. It would be an amenity to that apartment complex and to the adjacent neighborhood if they wanted to go over and play beer pong with the rest of them. So there's also a lot of dangers that are posed. Even if you're not concerned with the environmental impact on the river, you have to be concerned about the dangers to the adjacent neighborhood and to the college students living in the apartment complexes. That neighborhood, the water flows from the Blanco when it floods. When it flooded in 98, it flowed from the Blanco, and it drains out into the San Marcos River, and that's how they keep from totally flooding out.
FEMA regulations are general ones for the whole U.S. We live in a special place called Flash Flood Alley, where our 24-hour rainfall totals are like that of Bangladesh, up in the world-class category. The city has had special computer modeling done by consultants of the Blanco River and some other creeks and rivers years ago. It's important that you, as P&Z members, understand the results of those computer models done years ago. They are presumably more accurate than FEMA's because they include more information.
Cape's Camp is on the 100-year floodplain, and this is a misnomer. My family moved here to this area. We've had floods in 1972, 1978, 1981, 1992, and 1998, and at least one since then, and these are only the ones that I can actually remember. The 72, 78, and 98 floods were 500-year floods. Our parks department has turned this project down.
Rather new to San Marcos. I've lived here for 5 years, but the communities that I've lived in before have had past histories of flooding. Rapid City, South Dakota in 1972 had a flash flood situation which killed over 200 people on Rapid Creek. That whole area, after that incident, was turned into City Park. And to my knowledge, 40 years later, it still is. Broome County, New York, where I grew up, is on the confluence of two rivers. And in 2006 and 2011, they suffered devastating 100-year floods right in a row. And that's despite a system of levees and a system of pumping stations. And a year and a half later, the community is not even close to recovering. I know you said, Mr. Taylor, this is not an emotional decision, but I would ask you, please think about the future if you continue to build high-density developments in floodplains. Perhaps past residents haven't seen the water come across the road. That doesn't mean it won't. This is a very dangerous situation, and it's devastating to go back to my family's home and see businesses gone, jobs lost, schools closed, perhaps indefinitely. Community is still broken. Please don't set San Marcos up for that future scenario. It might not happen in the next 10 years, but if the area keeps growing at the rate it is, it certainly will happen at some point. And it starts now. If you have the opportunity not to build on this property in high density, you'll save the community that trauma and that economic cost. So I just would hope that you would consider that and vote no for this rezoning for this project. Thank you.
To the property boundary and connect to the trail south here would allow for connectivity of the city's pedestrian trails from I-35.
San Marcos. I mean, when you think about it, tax dollars are going to stay within the city that I grew up and still live in, so it's nice.
Mark Guerrero grew up down the street from this house, cheaper than up north.
And housing costs in San Marcos are 38% of what they are in Austin.
Fix the San Marcos River, access to I-35 with affordable housing, you get a very desirable city.
And we see the attraction to the state of Texas as a whole, and that sweet spot is here in Central Texas.
City of San Marcos says the annual construction of new single-family homes there has increased by about 82% in the past 5 years. The city also says more than 1,800 apartment units were built in the city in the past 2 years.
So we're pleased. We're certainly excited. Surprised? Absolutely not.
Really excited about what we see in the future.
And that sweet spot is here in Central Texas.
Called Flash Flood Alley.
A while ago, we are anticipating additional rain in the next 48 hours. And so certainly, as was mentioned a while ago, if you do not need to be out of your homes, if you've had an opportunity to be able to get to a relative's home, friend's home, or to one of our evacuation facilities, please stay there. The waters, while they are beginning to recede, it's still dangerous. There's certainly debris, potential.
Un amor album. If I can feel it, blind can see it, deaf will hear it, in and out of consciousness go boom. I feel it, un amor album.
That would allow us to connect access points and trails. You'll also be told that the project will cause flooding problems. That ignores not only the facts but the law. We cannot increase flooding problems legally, and we're happy to discuss exactly how that will not occur, but it ignores both the facts and the law. And you'll be told that we're going to pollute the river. And again, that ignores both the elevated standards that are in the San Marcos River corridor, as well as the fact that we go above and beyond those.
This is a picture of a project that we did in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where we had a similar situation with an interior park, and you can kind of get a sense of how we feel like the two areas will exist, where you see the townhomes and the streetscape in the distance, and a very nice park with fencing, wrought iron style fencing along the edge. This is just a graphic showing how we're going to tie in to Stokes Park and the park to the north there. On the stormwater front, as Steve mentioned, I believe one of the merits of our project is we're going to be dealing with some issues that exist over there now, improving situations as it relates to flooding and water quality. We've done an analysis. There's actually the Blanco River and the San Marcos River, and those floodplains kind of interact along here. And there's some concern that the Blanco could overtop at times and come down here, and water could go from the Blanco into the San Marcos River. According to the Thornton family and some of the hydrologists we've been talking to, we're not really seeing evidence of that, but we have done a lot of hydrology work on this, and we recognize that this is just not an option. It's not a requirement that's just in the PDD, but we have local, state, federal regulations that we're going to have to follow in dealing with FEMA, in dealing with these hydrology issues. There's been concerns that we would create some type of dam along River Road and prohibit water moving from the Blanco to the San Marcos River, and that's just absolutely not the case. There'll be numerous channels and pipe systems that will convey that water from the Blanco in the event it ever overtopped to the San Marcos River. From a water quality standpoint, we are in the river corridor, which does have higher water quality standards that exist in other parts of the city. But as staff mentioned, we're actually exceeding even those requirements in the PDD with some very stringent lid standards that we're itemizing in the PDD, and a commitment to the 85% total suspended solids. We're committed and obligated to make sure that we do not increase any flooding downstream or upstream or exacerbate what's perhaps not a good ideal situation now, but we may improve it.
So I brought a map of the floodplain tonight. I thought y'all might not have received this and might not really understand what's going on. It's from the city's website. The street names that are more in the center will orient you. The railroad tracks are here. You want a light? Is that what you're? Somebody said. Whatever. I need the whole thing actually. I wrote Cheatham Street in right there for you. The Kate's Camp, here's I-35, this long thing right here, and Kate's Camp is right there. Just to further explain, this is Sink Creek, Spring Lake, and the river as it goes through town and crosses I-35. This is the Blanco River, where it joins with the San Marcos, coming from this angle. See the royal blue right here, this swath, all the way from the Blanco River to the San Marcos River is the 100-year floodplain because it floods from the Blanco towards the San Marcos. If you build up land to plop apartments there, it will be like a levee that holds back water. I understand there are laws about drainage. The laws involve small rainfall events, not big ones. The planning department, or perhaps I should blame Mr. Taylor since he requested that I do that, should be showing you maps like this when you make critical decisions in floodplains. I knew that there was a lot of floodplain, but I was shocked when I saw this. The thing that shocks me the most is that these parks right here, these little river parks that I've labeled for you, those parks are where we moved people 50 years ago. Mr. Morris's mother was involved in that wonderful project. And we moved people and neighborhoods out so that they would not be endangered by flooding. Please note that all of this land is lower than the place where we moved people out to create our river parks. So, we're going to sweep that 50-year-ago project under the rug and put apartments in a floodplain in an even more dangerous spot that's lower, letting young people new to the town live there. They won't know that the city says on its website that floods can happen in 1 hour after rain starts. They won't know of the danger in crossing river bridges next door to their apartment like Capes Road. Instead of endangering current and future residents by rezoning, you should be pointing out all the great locations the master plan process has found for apartments. So please don't rezone to apartments until the master plan is done. Thank you.
And that was really compelling what Diane just showed us, and I would like to reiterate that certainly we cannot rely on just following regulations blindly to protect our river.
Barbara Drive. I've appeared here before and talked about the flooding. I've been through the three floods between 1998 and 2003. You don't just get water with floods, you get debris.
And all from an experienced developer. And yes, he's from Georgia. That's okay with me. I think that's reasonable.
I would say oppose rezoning to multifamily 24. Maybe give Dovetail a chance to clean up some of the holes that I found in some of the concept plan. I'm actually working on a concept plan for a class project on this particular property. And I think some improvements can be made. The lids, the low impact developments, are on the wrong side of the development. They're on the interior, not on the exterior. And as alluvial processes happen, and it goes downhill, it needs to be in between the development and the river. Another one might be that the parkland is more than what's needed and dedicated, but doesn't take into account the specific use of that parkland. And so the San Marcos River gets a lot of heavy traffic, whereas other parklands aren't going to get as much heavy traffic. And so if you open it up as a parkland, it's going to get a lot more traffic, not only from the residents, but also from the students, doubling and kind of muddying up the river and dirtying it that way. So with those things taken into account, maybe they could produce a little bit better concept plan before this one gets approved. Thanks.
The first one is just to reiterate the science that Diane Lawson presented with the floodplains. You know, back one of the mayoral candidates campaigned on global warming, and we all thought he was a crackpot.
And we as citizens, we need to stop being in this position where we're always defensive against things that want to be built. We've got to be more proactive about what we really do want.
Development within the city limits, within also neighborhoods, and also in virgin land. That is many of the citizens, and to bring up also that we have voted to in a non-binding resolution to be acquired as parkland. We've heard how this area has been prone to flooding during our several 500-year floods that have happened successfully in less than 500 years.
San Marcos is going to be a World Heritage class city someday, not long. The heritage of families that have loved this land for generations, 100 years. Why did you keep it for 100 years? Why didn't you build apartments? Because it was precious. Because it is the only place that's left like that. It is the only place in our city that we can protect.
Thank you, Nancy, Diane, all these wonderful speakers tonight, Gina, that have brought up maps and shown us the other view, and the developers for bringing forth a beautiful development. this has been really controversial, and I've spent a lot of time asking people on both sides of the fence about this project. What do you think and why? And everybody speaks incredibly highly of the Thornton family. Been, great stewards of this town for a long time. But there is one misconception. I've heard a lot about this non-binding referendum vote, but it actually reads, authorize the city to acquire the 70 acres, more or less, for parks and recreation purposes at a price not to exceed fair market value as determined by an appraisal. It didn't say 20 or 25 acres behind a student housing complex. Last April, the city invited all the citizens down to the Activity Center for open house. Let's talk about a halt on rezoning for a while, a moratorium or something like that. So 276 citizens more or less went down and filled out comment cards. 95% of them was please stop rezoning until the master plan is done. Special session was held and we came down here and some of the council members said, these people who filled out this comment cards and you in this very room don't represent the city. Well, now you've got 76% of the votes in San Marcos asking you to try to acquire this land for them. I look at this map, asphalt, apartment complexes, 20 acres of it on the riverbank. I'm sorry. I don't think that's what we want for our town. That does have hydrocarbons, and yes, it will pollute. I don't care what BMPs you have in place. When we have floods, that's going into the San Marcos River. We don't have much in San Marcos left, or even in this area that is pristine and preservable at this point. Preserve what we have not ruined. That land is beautiful, but there's nothing on it. That first picture that was shown that y'all couldn't bring up again with the family fishing there, that's what that land looks like. That's what it should remain, and not a big wild party house, because that is what it's going to be.
I mean, that's so close to the river. You have all that stuff running down into the river, and if you do any research according to the endangered species, as far as plant species we have in the river, it's far past that. What worries me is that some of that's going to run off from this property into the river and kill the species that are in the river.
Well, claims made earlier from the representative of the developers stating that this was a jewel is true. He was saying that this is a jewel with the project there, and I feel that if the project is there, it would devalue the jewel into a cubic zirconius. Student housing is not and should not be the city's prerogative. It should be directed up to the hill. It's Texas State is what's growing beyond control, not the town. The population is dwindling. It used to be around 48 to 50,000. Now it's about 42,000. Meanwhile, Texas State's reporting they're having record enrollments every fall, but yet the city is responsible, or we're becoming responsible for that growth, whether it's from the roads, whether it's from the developments.
We had this long conversation about grabbing babies out of houses, and we were worried about flooding.
And I live in the Dunbar neighborhood, and y'all know how Dunbar has flooded. I was in there when 2 of the babies drowned there.
Been through several floods. We've almost swam, we've pulled people out, we've taken the dump truck and gone down and hauled people out. They were trying to drown, all that sort of thing. We've been through it. And we know what water does on that other side of the river, other side of the Interstate 35. The Blanco comes up, comes down Highway 80 from the bridge, comes right straight on down, blocks off anybody trying to get out of there. There's no way to get out.
Like I said, I've got on the other video, it shows Highway 80 and 21 underwater. You've already got Blanco River Village approved. It will be underwater. You can watch the other video, check it out from the library if you care. But you maybe should have a executive session or something and go back in there and watch this for 6 minutes. The other one's a 6-minute video. And it is sheer destruction and sheer underwater. Citizens in Aquarina are underwater. This is by your fire chief, not by some local hog tree hunter. It's by our guys rescuing our own personnel, doing city rescues of city people, doing city rescues of civilians.
For the past 65 years and paid taxes actually 30 years before this property was even annexed in. To say the area of this proposed development is not floodable is, I believe, a gross understatement. I've, throughout my lifetime, heard stories of my grandparents putting the spinet piano on top of the dining room table. In 1998, my grandmother lived there by herself when the first of two big floods came through. And she went to sleep. An hour later, the river was lapping at her doorstep. And the Loyas had to come over and rescue her out. Ted Loya walked her through about waist-deep water, and they went out on the National Guard trucks.
Once that asphalt goes up, it's going to push all of the water down to the residents. Saving Mr. Conway was not the first time that my dad saved someone before. He is a Vietnam vet. He's a decorated soldier. He has a Purple Heart, a Bronze Star, and a Silver Star. I hope that we can treat our veterans better than that, and hope that the 30 years that my dad has invested into the neighborhood and to the home and to his country will be appreciated.
You go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Thomason.
Aye.
Mr. Bishak.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Prater.
No.
Mr. Tomides.
No.
Mayor Guerrero.
Aye.
Ms. Porterfield.
Aye.
Don't not worry, it's just a test. In and out of consciousness, go boom.
Anything
Well,
else?
wait means
Go ahead and we've already tabled
somebody
items number
wants
18.
to dance
Tabled
with.
item number 19. We've already completed item 20. Item 21 is questions with the press or public. Seeing none, I'll go ahead and accept the motion to adjourn. So a motion from Mr. Thompson, second from Councilmember Porterfield. We are adjourned at 11 p.m.
You are locked in live to San Marcos News Live, so lock it in, San Marcos, Texas.
Feeding the troops, are ya?
Yes, indeed.
I've never seen a pep rally nor a tailgate at any city hall. San Marcos rocks. So do you, Jamie. Give me a high five for the man. Woo! I'm sorry.
It's been a long, arduous battle over spot zoning is what this is all coming down to. And all of our love for the San Marcos River is why we're here and giving it all the support.
Woo!
All for coming out.
Quality.
Nice performance there, brother. That was awesome, man.
Thank you so much.
Love your work. You're awesome.
This is our best interest, and the other thing is, they've been approached several times.
Hi. Thank y'all for coming out today. All right. One night. Love it. Here we go. All right, well, the city council meeting has started, and there are still people lingering outside. And now we're going to watch the sea of public participation. Don't you just love it? She just asked all the crowd to come to the window so they could see him.
The risk of us having a 15-inch rain used to be 1 in 1,000. But now that we are in a climate change scenario, we can expect that to become 1 in 50. From 1 in 1,000 to
They're still
1
coming.
in 50 is our chance of having a 15-inch rain. I think this is extremely relevant when we're discussing building and putting all of these bedrooms with transient students who have just moved to town, don't understand that we're flash flood alley because we've been in a drought for years. They will be living in a floodplain. So this is very relevant to your decision tonight. Obviously, you know, you've heard from me many times, I think this is an extremely inappropriate place to place apartments in this neighborhood next, once you put another one in here. So that is why you don't have the full 20% needed for a security.
What we're going to talk about is the benefits of the apartment or the non-benefits of the apartment. What about the benefit of the landlord?